Hello everyone, welcome to English. My name is GD Sharma and this is the continuation of the lecture series on cultural studies. Guys, in the previous video we talked about the origin and introduction of cultural studies. Now in this video we are going to deal with some of the important key words related to cultural studies, that is method and methodology, circuit of culture, language and discourse. So let's start the video. However, if you are watching this video for the first time, please subscribe the channel so that you keep receiving these videos in future. And if you feel this video is worth watching, do like and share it among your friends so that they may also be benefited, and use the comment box below for your valuable inputs. So let's start the video. As you know that all cultural forms are directly linked to the institutions, the market, the consumer and regulatory bodies. So cultural studies believes that no work, no cultural artifact can be studied in isolation or in the aesthetic realm. For example, a novel must not be read only in its generic conventions, as a piece of literature, as a work of fiction, or in its historical context only. Rather, it should be read in the terms of publishing industry, its profit, the community of reviewers, the academic field of literary criticism, the politics of award, hype and publicity machinery that works underneath. So it is not possible in any cultural studies project to read a novel, for example the novel of J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter, to read just as a novel, as a piece of literature, work of fiction or a fantasy tale. Actually, cultural studies cannot separate this novel from the huge publishing industry or machinery that is in operation around all the books. And what we purchase, we don't purchase just a book, just a novel, just a story of a boy wizard who undergoes many adventures. We buy the whole enterprise, which includes trivia, author speak, biography, autobiography and merchandise. So cultural studies asks, how does a cultural artifact generate meaning in and for a community? For example, if we ask in our country, how does cricket attract so much money? And how does the male cricketers like Virat Kohli have so much stardom, name and fame and glamour? While on the other hand, some female counterpart like Mithali Raj, Jhulan Goswami have no stardom or name and fame and glamour. So is cricket masculinized game? And if we want to answer this question under the purview of cultural studies, they have two different things, interpretation and critique. So they interpret that cricket is a visual sign or text that is scripted or written by the larger community or culture, that is India. And as a matter of critique, they give that it is a matter of gender inequality. It is because of the normative patriarchal notion that work underneath. It is about male chauvinistic notion that unduly promote male characters, male cricketers, male people over the female counterparts. So cultural studies says that any cultural artifact or form cannot be read without its social context or material context. Now let's come to the point, that is method of cultural studies. How a researcher under the purview of cultural studies executes his research. So we have two different terms, method and methodology, which are not the same in cultural studies. Actually, method is a formal approach and technique employed by the researchers like field work, questionnaire or interviews, etc. On the other hand, methodology refers to the political position and the interpretive strategies that are employed by researchers. It refers to the epistemological, philosophical or political position through which he scrutinizes his own location as well. In short, methodology is a critical approach that a researcher uses to interpret the data collected. For example, if we want to study the representation of women in film industry, so we have method and methodology. Under method, we can collect data like questionnaire, asking questions and conducting interviews. So we may form an idea on the basis of the data we have collected through these two mediums. So this can be our method. And methodology would include the political position of the researchers. A researcher has to clear his political stance, whether he is a Marxist or a feminist. For example, a feminist study of the representation of women in film industry would conclude that it is all about gender inequality. It is all about normative patriarchal notion that works underneath. It is about that women are merely the showpiece and they are worth showing in the film industry or the films. Otherwise, the films would not look that colorful. So they are merely decorative pieces. Female characters are used only for their beauty. So they are deliberately or unduly relegated to a second position. So this is the stance or this is the interpretation from the cultural point of view. So cultural studies argues that no cultural artifact can be separated from its social or material conditions or context. So cultural studies is more interested in the way meanings are made and the discourses within which these are made. This involves a study of the processes of representation and text, seeing these as instrumental in the construction of identity. That is, cultural studies investigates intensively the production of meaning rather than involving itself in extended observation. Now let's talk about what is circuit of culture. In 1997, Paul Duguay suggested a theory or a framework which is essential for the close or sophisticated analysis of any cultural artifact. And this requires the close examination of 5 basic elements which constitute the circuit of culture and which includes representation, identity, production, consumption and regulations. He himself suggested that taken together these 5 points complete a sort of circuit through which any analysis of a cultural text must pass if it is to be adequately studied. This framework was used in Cell Phone Culture, Mobile Technology in Everyday Life, a book by Gerard Gogin. Although the circuit of culture is the most thorough examination of any cultural artifact, yet in present scenario in contemporary setting across the world, certain other areas and methods are adopted worldwide to understand the modes of meaning production, which are language and discourse, identity, everyday life, ethnography, media studies, reception and audience studies, and cultural intermediaries. So now let us understand what is language and discourse in cultural studies. However, beforehand it is quite essential to refer to the definition of culture and society by Raymond Williams, which says our description of our experience comes to compose a network of relationships, and all our communication systems, including the arts, are literary parts of our social organization. Since our way of seeing is literally our way of living, the process of communication is in fact the process of community. So according to this definition, the key element is our experience, which can be further summarized in the following points. Studying society is about culture and not about economics and politics. Meanings and values and their exchange or circulation constitute a particular culture or community. So communication creates community. A society's meanings and values reflect its economic and political systems, and hence to study meanings is to study a culture. Culture is about the role of meaning in any society. A culture is the sharing of meaning. And meanings are never fixed. They are arrived at through a process of negotiation and exchange. So meanings are the processes of language, and language is not just a word or print. It can be a speech, painting or photography. And in cultural studies, the preferable term for meaning is representation. Representation is the process of signifying meaning generation or making of meaning. It can be a word or sign and its concept or meaning. Representation presents the world in such a way that we understand it. It can be an image, word, sound or a concept. So representation uses these signs or one of these signs to generate meaning. In short, representation is the alphabet of culture. It is the language of culture. So word and concept behind the word makes meaning, and word, concept, meaning and context make the representation. But this language is not neutral or transparent. The language and the meaning are connected to the issues of class, power, ideology, or the material conditions in which the interpretation occurs. So all the meanings and language are not independent of the context underneath. And this context is the discourse. And this can be understood with a simple example. Suppose we go to the market to purchase the toys for a girl and a boy of 4 or 5 years. We ask the same to the shopkeeper. And look what happens. The shopkeeper naturally gives either a doll or a kitchen set, that too in a pink color, for the baby girl. And when we ask the same for the baby boy, he may give either tools, guns or cars. The point is that dolls become the sign of feminine the way tools and guns are the sign of masculinity. Dolls and girls are interchangeable. Similarly, toys like tools, guns are interchangeable with boys. It is not that girls cannot handle the toys like tools and guns and cars. The point is that certain values are associated with these toys, which decide the user and the owner of these tools. Perhaps it is the normative patriarchal notion that work as a culture, which decides or which formulates that certain things are for girls only and certain things are for boys. Girls being tender and delicate, which needs grooming and care and protection, they are given such kind of toys which also need care and grooming and protection. So it is the culture that decides which kind of toys have to be played by the girls rather than the inherent qualities of the toys themselves. In this way, we may refer to Judith Butler's gender trouble, where she says that the gender is performed over time. Girls are given such kind of things which become their identity. And the girls, they are expected to behave in the like manner over a certain period of time, or they are expected to do these tasks repeatedly until they become their characteristic tasks. So according to Judith Butler, it is not the biological identity that decides the gender. It is the performance of certain tasks, certain tools by the gender that decides gender. So doll is feminine and tool is masculine, and this is the language of that culture. And this language is naturalized over time. This becomes a culture. And the discourses are the patriarchal notion, patriarchal ideology that functions underneath, which decides that these certain things are given to boys and certain things are given to girls. They are meant for the girls, they are meant for the boys. So this becomes discourse, the context under which or in which the cultural studies interprets or elucidates or examines certain things. In that way, text is toys. Language is meaning of these toys, like dolls, feminine, and tools, masculinity. And the discourse is patriarchy and gender difference. But the story does not end here. These two terms, feminine and masculinity, are not definite and are not individual entity in themselves. The meaning of the one is dependent on other. So we may refer to the structuralist or post-structuralist point of view here, which says that meaning is always relational. What is not masculine is feminine. So the meaning of feminine is dependent on the meaning of masculine. This works as a binary opposition. One thing is when other thing is not. So one thing is not because one thing is. One thing is because the other thing is not. So the meaning of one thing is clearly dependent on the other. So guys, this is the video for today. Hope you would like this video, and I hope that this video will certainly add something to your existing knowledge about cultural studies. Stay tuned for more such videos about cultural studies. So keep learning, stay motivated. Have a nice day, have a nice preparation. Like and share this video. Thank you so much.